Hi guys, as we know, during the Brexit negotiations for the TCA, Boris Johnson and his government focused on goods at the expense of services. I can only imagine how people in the City of London, the powerhouse of the British economy, looked on in horror as both Brexiteers inside and outside government continued to talk about fish and the fishing industry being the priority of any discussions. Later EU officials were recorded as being equally confused as to why something as large as the lawnmower industry was put front and centre during the negotiations. Now, the European Commission has been very clear that it wants to bring all euro-denominated transactions in-house and not continue to see them done in the United Kingdom, something that has spooked the city. Here, Chris Hayward, the chairman of the City of London, talks about respecting Brexit but having a better relationship with the EU to benefit both sides. Have a listen.
I actually think Prime Minister Sunak now has taken a very positive approach to the EU, as has our Chancellor, Jeremy Hunt. So I think, those days are past. I talk about a painful divorce. It was a painful divorce. But I think, we have to now get trust back, because the opportunities for both the EU and the UK, by trading together, by working together, far outweigh those conflicts.
But I suppose, is it over for the UK, given that you have a sort of stubbornly high inflation rate, which people like Mark Carney are saying was a direct result of Brexit?
Let's be clear, some of these issues you've talked about are common across Europe. So high inflation isn't peculiar to the UK, nor high interest rates. We're all affected by the geopolitical issues that are affecting our economies at the present time. The one thing I think we need to do in the UK, and I think the EU as well, frankly, is to drive economic growth. We haven't had a lot of economic growth over the past few years, and we need to get growth back into the system. And I think EU countries are finding the same challenge as well.
Well, then does that not mean that the UK is better off in something like the European Union? When you look at the US, the way it has its Inflation Reduction Act, and the EU, where you can work together as 27 member states, you just look at the COVID Recovery Fund and various other funds that happened throughout COVID. The UK is an outlier because of the supply issues, the cost of supply. It's at the end of the supply chain. It's not just a global issue, is it?
Look, I regret us not being in the single market. I think to not be in the single market was a mistake, and I'll always think it was a mistake. But I do think that the opportunities now for us are that we have to now compete on the world stage. We have to stand alone. We're capable of standing alone. I think we'd have been better standing within the EU, but we now have to seize those opportunities that are available to us.
How do you see standing alone and having growth? Does that mean driving down regulations, social dumping, all that kind of thing?
No. So first of all, we don't want to deregulate. Let me be absolutely clear. High quality regulation, financial regulation, is really important to getting inward financial investment from across the world. So that's actually very important to us. Getting growth is about getting investment growth into the country. So it's stimulating our fintech sector, for example.
Just final question, because, it may not be over for some people. 62% of people would like to rejoin. Would you relish a second referendum or, even a conversation about that?
Personally, no. I think not in my lifetime. I think we have now taken a decision. There has been a referendum. Of course, you could always argue, would that swing the other way if we did it again now? I think we've now set a course for ourselves, which we now have to follow.
Okay, thank you very much for joining us.
Okay, I really don't understand this approach. So you have the chairman of the City of London coming out as a Remainer. You can clearly understand from what he's saying here that he regrets, he says, the UK leaving not being part of the single market, and he regrets not being part of the EU. But he won't come out and criticise Brexit. Now, he talks here about regulation. We need to have good regulations, robust regulations. This will, of course, attract investment. But the problem here is that Brexiteers, the people in charge, don't want that. They want to go in the opposite direction. They want to have fewer regulations. They want to deregulate. And they want to move away from the types of rules and regulations that the European Union have. So you have businesses who are calling out for stronger regulations, more alignment with the EU standards, and you have politicians saying, no, we need to go in the opposite direction. Now, I think it would help if business leaders, senior business leaders, came out and criticised Brexit. And it's not just because we disagree with Brexit, but because it would send a message to the public that Brexit is the problem here. by talking about, well, we regret not being part of the single market, and we regret not being part of a bigger community. This sort of tap dances around the issue. You need to call it out. You need to say, the reason we're suffering these problems is because of Brexit. People were convinced that things would be better. They were lied to. You can call that out. You're a business leader. You're in a strong position. You're not going to lose your job over this. There was a time when I believe business leaders were afraid to criticize Brexit because the British government would, in a sense, punish them for that. We're past that. The vast majority of voters believe that Brexit was a mistake. Either the people who believe that it should have gone another way, or people who believe that it was a mistake from the start. So I think business leaders in particular, are in a stronger position to call it out. So it's really frustrating to listen to somebody who obviously voted to remain, who understands the consequences of Brexit, and is talking about having a better relationship with the European Union, commending Rishi Sunak and Jeremy Hunt for what they have done, and believing that, well, the way forward is for us to seize the opportunities. What opportunities? Nobody has come out with any opportunities. And for the City of London, this is a serious problem, because as the European Commission wants to bring more operations into Europe and away from Britain, this is going to damage the city. The City of London is still going to remain a very important place for finance. That is a guarantee. But the more industries move out, more sectors move out of London, be it the financial services sector or others, it's going to damage the UK economy. It's going to be more difficult for the Exchequer to raise the finance it needs, and it's going to be more difficult for the government to provide for public services. A route back into the European Union would stop some of that, would eventually bring some of that investment back perhaps. But at the moment, there's no sign of that from neither party. And I really wish business leaders like this man here would call it out, would criticize Brexit for what it is. As I said at the beginning, the politicians were focusing on fish and fishing when they should have been focusing on imports, on exports, real imports and exports. They should have been focusing on the financial services sector. They should have been focusing on the real powerhouse of the economy, the City of London. But that was ignored, because a romantic image of Brexit, that being fishing, was put front and center. The politicians didn't know they're behind from their elbow. And this has been the result. Let me know in the comment section, guys, what you think about all of this. As always, your comments are greatly appreciated. Thanks a lot.